What if the very act of asking is the reason you're not receiving? That single thought flips everything upside down. For most of us, we've been taught to wish, to beg, to wait for change. But Neville Goddard turned this idea on its head. He taught that reality bends not when you plead for it, but when you assume it is already yours. Neville wasn't just another thinker of his time. He was a revolutionary voice who dared to say, your imagination is not a daydream, it is the blueprint of your future. Long before neuroscience confirmed the brain cannot distinguish vividly imagined experiences from real ones, Neville was telling people, live from the end, step into the identity of the one who already has what you desire. Why does this matter right now in your life? Because so many of us are caught in the trap of waiting for circumstances to change, waiting for proof, waiting for the right moment. But Neville's real message is this: stop waiting, stop asking, start assuming. Over the next few minutes, we're going to explore how imagination, assumption, and feeling work together to reshape your reality from the inside out. If you're ready to step into your limitless creative power, stay with me. What you're about to hear may just transform the way you see your life forever. The law of assumption is deceptively simple, yet it holds the power to transform every corner of your life. At its core, Neville Goddard taught that life does not respond to what you merely wish for. It responds to what you assume to be true. To assume is not to hope. It is not to beg or to wait. To assume is to embody here and now the state of being the person who already possesses the thing desired. It is to carry yourself, to think, to feel, to act as though your prayer has already been answered. Neville often said, assumption hardens into fact. This means that your inner state, it's not a shadow, it is the seed. What you assume in imagination is already alive in a higher dimension of reality, waiting to crystallize into this world. If you assume lack, life mirrors lack. If you assume wealth, love, or freedom, life rearranges itself to match. This law is impersonal. It does not reward the worthy or punish the unworthy. It simply reflects the assumptions you persist in holding, and persistence is the key. A fleeting thought will not create a new world, but a steady assumption, lived in daily, becomes flesh. The law of assumption is not about forcing reality. It is about knowing reality is already yours and resting in that conviction until the outer world bends to your inner world. When Neville Goddard spoke of assumption, he was not describing wishful thinking. He was pointing toward a secret law of creation that most people overlook. To assume is to take an inner position so solid that the world outside has no choice but to bend to it. It is the quiet decision that what you desire is already true, already alive, already yours. Most people pray by asking, hoping some distant force will listen. But Neville revealed that assumption is prayer fulfilled. It is the living faith that your inner state is the seed of tomorrow. Think of it like planting a seed in the soil. You do not plead with the soil to grow the tree. You place the seed, you trust it, and you carry the quiet confidence that the tree will emerge. Assumption works the same way. The moment you wear the feeling of your wish as reality, you have already planted the seed in the subconscious. And once the subconscious accepts it, life arranges itself in ways the conscious mind cannot predict. This is why Neville insisted, stop asking as if you lack, and begin assuming as though it is done. The inner world always precedes the outer. To assume is not arrogance. It is alignment. It is the recognition that creation begins within you. When you live in assumption, you are no longer a beggar at the gates of heaven. You become the author of your experience, the silent sculptor shaping reality from within. Neville's most profound revelation was simple, yet world-shattering. Feeling is the secret. What you feel within yourself, you will meet in the world around you. Not someday, not in some distant future, but inevitably, for the outer world bends to the vibration of your inner state. This is why so many prayers go unanswered. People ask with words, but they feel lack. They pray with their lips, but in their hearts, they expect disappointment. The universe does not answer what you say. It reflects what you are. To assume is to step into the feeling of the wish fulfilled. It is to carry yourself as though the miracle has already happened. When you walk into a room, when you rise from bed, when you close your eyes at night, you hold the end result in your heart, until it becomes as real as the breath in your lungs. Think of emotion as the ink with which you write your destiny. Thoughts without feeling are powerless scribbles, but thoughts infused with living, breathing emotion are commands that reality cannot ignore. So ask yourself not, when will it happen, but rather, how would I feel if it had already happened? That feeling, the relief, the joy, the quiet certainty, is the bridge between you and your desire. And here lies Neville's unshakable truth. Assume the state, feel it deeply, and the world will conform. Most people believe their lives are shaped by what they say out loud, but Neville revealed a deeper secret. Your life bends not to outer words, but to the inner conversations you repeat when no one is listening. Every day, countless thoughts race through your mind, each carrying the weight of a quiet command. You replay arguments, imagine outcomes, and rehearse fears. Without knowing it, you are programming your reality, not with conscious prayer, but with the whispers you entertain in the privacy of your mind. Neville called this the inner speech, a hidden dialogue between your imagination and your world. If you are silently repeating, "I can't," "It's too late," "Life is unfair," then those words become the soil from which your circumstances grow. But if you dare to shift those conversations, to quietly affirm, "I already have it," "I am worthy," "It is done," then reality, step by step, begins to reflect the change. This is why Neville insisted that assumption is greater than prayer. Prayer asks, but assumption lives as if it's already answered. Inner speech is the bridge between wanting and having. By choosing new conversations, you are not merely wishing, you are rewriting the script of your life. The greatest transformations come not from loud declarations, but from the silent sentences you tell yourself when the world is still. Guard them, shape them, because they will shape you. Assumption, Neville taught, is not a mental trick. It is the bridge between the invisible and the visible. The world you see around you is nothing but crystallized imagination, hardened thoughts that were once fleeting assumptions. If you dare to assume what feels impossible, you set creation in motion. But here lies the secret most ignore. Assumption only works when it is felt real, when it seeps into your very bones as though it has already happened. This is not about daydreaming or repeating empty words. It is about walking, breathing, and living from the end. When you assume with conviction, you enter into a sacred agreement with yourself. Life begins to shift, often in ways that defy logic. Doors open where there were none. People appear who carry the answers. Circumstances bend in your favor. What seemed impossible begins to feel inevitable. That is the silent power of assumption. It does not shout. It does not beg. It simply rearranges reality to mirror your inner state. The great challenge, however, is persistence. Doubt whispers, the senses scream, and the old world pushes back. This is when most abandon the practice, returning to their prayers of lack. But Neville's wisdom reminds us, hold firm, assume, and continue to assume. For once the seed is planted in imagination, it must grow. And when it does, you will look around in awe, realizing the truth he always spoke. The world is yourself pushed out. Neville Goddard's most powerful and practical teaching can be summed up in 3 words: live in the end. He explained that most of us keep our desires at a distance by treating them as future goals. We say, one day I'll be rich, one day I'll be loved, one day I'll be free. But in saying that, we admit to ourselves that right now we are not. And the mind faithfully creates according to that present state of lack. Living in the end means stepping into the reality of your wish fulfilled right here, right now. It is the conscious decision to think, feel, and walk as though your desire is already yours. If you want wealth, you do not anxiously wait for money. You feel the inner relief and freedom of abundance. If you long for love, you do not chase or plead. You enter the sweet state of already being cherished, already chosen. This practice is not fantasy, it is creation. Neville often reminded his students, the world is nothing more than a mirror reflecting the state you occupy within yourself. When you persist in living from the end, the mirror has no choice but to change. To live in the end is to collapse time. Instead of waiting for the future, you pull it into the present. You rest in the awareness that what you desire already is. And in that state, fear, doubt, and desperation dissolve. What remains is calm confidence, the quiet knowing that creation is finished, and your only task is to live in the joy of it now. This is the secret to manifestation, not waiting, but being. Not someday, but today. Neville often reminded his listeners that assumption doesn't speak in words, but in silent certainty. Prayer, for most, is noisy, filled with pleading, repetition, and hope that someone above will intervene. Assumption, however, is quiet. It doesn't beg. It doesn't negotiate. It knows. Imagine a seed buried in soil. The seed does not pray to the earth to let it grow. It does not plead with the sun to shine or the rain to fall. It simply assumes that growth is its destiny, and in silence it unfolds. This is the language of assumption, a stillness that carries infinite confidence. When you assume, you carry the vibration of your desire fulfilled without speaking a word. Your actions, posture, and even the rhythm of your thoughts align with what you know to be true. People around you may not understand why you walk differently, why you glow, or why opportunities seem to fall into your hands, but it is because you have taken on the garment of assumption. Neville's real message was this: prayer is not about asking, but about being. The silent assumption, held consistently without doubt, has more power than 1,000 desperate prayers. It is not loud, but it reshapes worlds. At its heart, this silent language is the true communion with the divine. God listens not to words, but to the state of being you inhabit. And the one who assumes already lives the answered prayer. Neville Goddard's most famous teaching can be summed up in one phrase: live from the end. It means to shift your inner world until you already feel the joy, relief, and gratitude of having what you desire. You don't wait for evidence in the outside world. You don't pray as though something is missing. Instead, you step into the version of you who already has it, and you live there, in imagination, in feeling, in assumption. When you live from the end, your imagination ceases to be a wish and becomes an experience. For example, instead of hoping for a new home, you mentally walk through its halls. You feel the doorknob in your hand. You smell the paint on the walls. You hear your footsteps echo. To your subconscious, these images and sensations are as real as the physical world, and since the subconscious is the creative power, it will move heaven and earth to reflect this inner assumption. This is why Neville said, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and continue feeling it until it hardens into fact. It is not repetition that brings results, but deep conviction, your willingness to dwell in the invisible reality until the visible must conform. Living from the end requires trust. It requires the courage to close your eyes to the world as it is and open them to the world as you have decreed it. It asks you to stop fighting circumstances and instead to choose a state of being that feels like completion. When you do this, you stop chasing and start attracting. You no longer live in hope. You live in fulfillment. And soon your physical world can only echo what your inner world has already become.